Hi, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be making gluten-free and vegan pie dough. So what we have here in our bowl, we've already mixed this together. It's going to be 12 ounces of our vegan flour blend, which is brown rice flour, white rice flour, tapioca starch, and potato starch. That recipe will be in the description. I have 2 ounces of sweet rice flour, 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1.5 ounces of granulated sugar. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this in our food processor. If you don't have one, you can do this by hand. It's just a little bit easier in the food processor. So that's all going to go in there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to put the top on and pulse it a few times just to mix all the ingredients together. The next ingredient what we're going to be putting in here is 5 ounces of vegan chilled palm shortening. You can certainly use butter. You could use a vegan butter. I just think palm shortening makes it as flaky as possible. I do think it is the best fat to use in this. So we have had this chilling for at least a half hour. You just don't want it to be soft because you're just not going to get any of that flakiness in your pie dough. So this is nice and cold. We're going to put all that in there. That's 5 ounces. Okay. And then what we're going to do is put the top on and we're going to pulse it until the shortening resembles small peas. If you watched our scone video, you'll hear me say the same thing. When you're making things that you want to be flaky, you don't want the butter to be mixed in and soft, and you want the butter that stays cold and in little chunks inside of there is what makes it flaky. So we're gonna go in here and we're just gonna pulse this again. I'm gonna open it up, make a little mess. See what we're looking at in there? So most of it is, see there's still a couple of big pieces, so we're just gonna pulse it a few more times. Like I said, you can do this with your hands if you don't wanna wash your food processor or you don't have one. You can just do it with your hands. You just don't want your hands to be too warm. You do not want the fat in here to get melted at all. So if you see there's some nice chunks of fat in there that resemble small peas, we're going to take this and dump it into a bowl. Okay, and pie dough really doesn't, at least ours, did not have a ton of ingredients, and it's pretty easy to put together. We sell a lot of this here, and we're going to be using this today making a pot pie, so make sure you check out that video too, because this dough is going into a vegan vegetable pot pie. Delicious. All right, so you've got all of that in there. There's only going to be 2 other ingredients that we're putting in. We're putting in some lemon juice, so that's right here. It's going to be 1.5 ounces, and then 1/2 cup of ice water. You want the water to be as cold as possible. Like I said, you do not want your fat to start melting or get too soft. All right, we're going to put on some gloves. It's going to get a little bit messy here. All right, so I'm going to pour the lemon juice in there, and then we're going to start mixing. You really just want this to come together. You never want to over mix. And there's a chance that you might need a little bit more water, less water. You really just have to feel it out. Sometimes, someone will put an extra teaspoon of water in there, or your house is a little bit warm and the butter starts to break down and get soft. So as you see, it is starting to come together. So I'm going to put my other hand in there and just start squeezing it lightly till it comes together. The reason why we don't put the liquid in the food processor is because then you'd break down the butter smaller and you'd never get any of those flakes in your pie dough. This is the dough that we sell around Thanksgiving when we do apple pie, pecan pie, pumpkin pie, of course. This is the dough that we make our quiche out of. Make lots of stuff here with this dough. We do sell it. People can pre-order a pie crust for those holidays or really any time. Also, if you don't feel like making pie crust and you're making an apple pie or a pot pie, there are a few brands out there that are pretty delicious. You just got to find one that fits your allergens. Like I said, this one is nut-free, soy-free, gluten-free, vegan, all the things. Not taste-free, it's delicious. Okay, so as you see, it has all come together. We've hardly handled it at all. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to split these 2 in half, and we are going to roll out one for a bottom crust, roll out one for a top crust. and then you'll see the end result. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we have split these in two. We're gonna take one of the balls of the dough and put it on plastic wrap. All of our pie dough gets rolled out through plastic wrap. It's not something that you do just on your table. It just doesn't work that way. But you don't have to, flour anything and make a huge mess because it's all in plastic. So, all right, so what we're gonna do is this dough does need to chill a little bit. So we are gonna make a nice round. It's better if you make it about the shape that you want before you chill it, because when you go to re-roll it again, you're gonna be kind of irritated if it's a square and you have to try to make it into a circle. Okay, so what we're gonna do is make this into a circle, wrap this up. We're gonna do that to the second one, and both of these are gonna go in the fridge for about 2 hours until they get nice and cold, and we'll be back soon. Hi. Okay, these have been chilled for a couple of hours. I did take them out about 20 minutes ago just so I could handle them a little bit better, so you don't have to watch me try to get them to room temperature again. So they're a hint softer than when you first take them out of the fridge. I actually suggest that a little bit just because it makes rolling it just a hint easier. If they're super cold like a brick, they're gonna be very hard to roll out. Okay, so we're gonna put down a piece of plastic wrap. We are gonna unwrap our dough. This recipe makes 2 doughs, so you can either have this be 2 bottoms, a bottom and a top. You can make, I don't know, Pop-Tarts out of this, which we'll probably do in a future video. You can make a lot of things, hand pies. All right, so we put another piece of plastic on top of this, and then we're just gonna start rolling. And you wanna sort of go back and forth from the center because you want it to be as close to a circle as possible. You don't wanna have to keep reforming the dough over and over. The only problem with our dough is that since it is in plastic, the plastic will start to almost catch on the edges. So you do have to kind of lift it up so then you can keep rolling. Because if you don't, the dough will get sort of backed up in the corner and you won't be able to roll it out any further. All right, so just take a look at it, and you want it to be a decent size as the pan. We're gonna be using a 9-inch aluminum pan here. So what I do is I always flip it upside down on top to see kind of where we're at. Obviously we want a little bit more of our crust, at least on this side. So we're gonna just take from the center and roll out. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then like you see a little bit's thin here, a little bit's thick here. We'll probably just take a little bit of that off and put it on this side. It does not matter. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just really want it to cook consistently. That's all we really care about. These are baked goods, they're delicious. Sometimes, yes, you want everything to look beautiful, but you want it to, taste is the most important. All right, so that's a pretty good look at what we're going for here. We flip this upside down. We've got a good amount on each side here. And if you can see, I'm not sure if you can see in the video, you see the pockets of fat that are in there, like all those little white specks. That's all the shortening, which is good. That's what you want. That's what's gonna give you the layers. All right, so we're gonna lift this top plastic off. And then what I do is I just lightly put our pan here, kind of where we want it, lift up just a part of the dough so I can put my hand underneath it, and then just flip it over. And then while the plastic is still on, I like to get into all the edges here. It's just easier than warming it up with your hands. And you wanna work, you wanna work as quick as possible because you just don't want this pie crust to get hot. Okay, so we're gonna take this plastic off. And as you can see, there are some places where there's a little bit more. Does not matter, like I said. All right, so we're just gonna sort of pull up the edges here to make it as even as possible. This is just more a way that we know how much is on each side. So like over here is definitely a little bit shy. This happens every time. I mean, I'm not gonna spend an hour making a perfect circle. We can easily fix that as we're putting it together. If you've made regular pie dough, this one in your hand will feel a little bit more crumbly, but it's very easy to work with. It comes right back together. So don't be afraid like you did something wrong. Okay, so I just sort of pile it up a little bit over here. For this one, if you are using this as just a bottom, so you're gonna be using this for quiche or a pumpkin pie or like an apple crumb pie, pecan pie, you're not gonna put a top on. I'm gonna show you how you can do the sort of decorative edges. If you are gonna be putting a top crust on this or a lattice crust, you're gonna be doing more of the decoration once the top crust goes on. We're not gonna show you that part today, but we'll show you when we do that. If you ever go to our pot pie video, we'll show you there how you'd put a top crust on and connect those. Okay, so what I do is see how it's all about even there? And then what I do is I sort of take my fingers here and my hand and push together. So you just want it all to come together and be consistent. I found this is just the easiest way. You're just sort of hitting it from both sides. And that just gets all those little pieces together and gives you a nice consistent crust. Okay, now for the decoration part. Everyone does this different, so this is my way. Do whatever way makes you comfortable. All right, so I sort of take my thumbs from the back. So I sort of push in and push these two fingers down. So I push in and then push together. Push in, together. But people have 5 million different ways to do this. This is just my 46-year-old way that I like to make pie crust after many years of making pie crust. Okay, so like I said, if you're using this if you were gonna use this for a pumpkin pie, you would just use it like this. You'd add your filling in and get it in the oven, but just look at your pie directions. Some pies need to be blind baked, so if you were making this for say a chocolate cream pie, you'd need to blind bake the shell. That means you bake the shell ahead of time. So you would put some sort of parchment in the bottom and some pie weights on there, and that means that you are baking this whole outside of the crust. And that the problem with the weights is that the crust will start to come up from the bottom and make a bubble. So you put the weights on the bottom. So as soon as it gets toasty on the edges, then you take the weights out and you cook the rest of the crust. So just follow the directions on whatever pie or quiche or pot pie that you're making, and this will act like a regular pie crust. All right, thanks for joining us on this. Make sure you check out our other videos and like, subscribe, comment, tell us if you've made this, maybe post some pictures on our Instagram, which is at Pure Love Bakery, and show us what pies you've made. And thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.